It was supposed to be one of the largest settlement agreements in history.
So, Noah regards this as his work, fighting for other kids, so they don't have to go through what he's been through and that they're not alone.
$40 billion for Indigenous children who were discriminated against by Canada's child welfare and healthcare systems.
So we're really proud of him. We're really proud of his courage and his willingness to do this and to be an advocate for other kids.
A decades-long victory that, for now, has been put on hold.
Noah's, he's willing to put himself out there to be the representative so that the system changes.
Edmonton, Alberta, a regional center that provides essential healthcare services for a number of surrounding First Nations. For families that live on reserve, the city has become a lifeline, mostly out of necessity and due in large part to government inequity. Families like that of Noah Buffalo Jackson.
Can you say Wapskasni?
Right, my son.
So I'm Carolyn Buffalo. My real name is Eskigayat in Cree, and which means one who has earth. And I'm Noah's mother, and Noah's 20 now. And so this is Noah Buffalo Jackson, and his real name is Wapskasni, and that means white rock, but it's not just any white rock. It's the white rock that sits at the base of the Sundance Pole. So it's a very significant white rock. His name is Wapskasni.
Noah was born with severe cerebral palsy that requires around-the-clock care. For the last 2 decades, his family has made the 100-kilometer journey from their home community on Montana Cree Nation into the city in order for Noah to receive a level of care and treatment that most Canadians take for granted.
God, I can't believe this. How's it going, brother?
Everywhere I turned, doors were slammed in our faces. So we had to really advocate and fight for things, just basic things like wheelchairs and medication, stuff that if you
diapers we had to fight for.
Yeah, everything. If you live off reserve, you get these things, no question. But we had to fight for everything. We couldn't even send him to the same school as his brother and sister attended because they wouldn't take him. We couldn't get the funding for his that would be required to accommodate him simply because we live on reserve. So we were discriminated against at every turn.
Over the years, the family has had to fight for everything. From Noah's medication and his wheelchair to a proper education and even a ride to school. Things Buffalo says he would get easily if they lived off reserve.
The system wanted us to move away from our community. You know, it's the same principles as the 60s scoop, you know. The kids are better off reserve, so move them off. But no, they belong in our communities. They belong with their families. They belong surrounded by their language on our ancestral land. They belong home. And that's what the government should have been doing all of this time, is supporting children and their families.
Go to the office. We'll see you later.
We first met Noah back in 2014. 8 years have passed since then, but the concerns and frustrations were much the same.
We shouldn't have to fight. We shouldn't have to argue. I shouldn't have to go and explain to some bureaucrat why my child needs special equipment or medication.
But the right to access essential health care needs on reserve was supposed to be a thing of the past. Back in the early 2000s, a family from the remote Manitoba community of Norway House, Cree Nation, was also fighting for the health of their son. Jordan River Anderson was born with a rare muscular disorder that required constant treatment.
Love that sound.
Jordan spent his entire life in a Winnipeg hospital, while the provincial and federal governments fought over who would pay for his care.
Nobody shouldn't have to fight for children's needs. Every children deserves a chance in life.
Jordan slipped into a coma and passed away in 2005. He was only 5 years old. Out of that tragedy, Jordan's principle was born.
With this legislation, the aim is Canada will provide First Nations children the same health care services in a comparable time frame as all other Canadian children.
Mr. Clement, Mr. Straw.
In 2007, the Jordan's Principle motion passed unanimously in the House of Commons. It was a historic moment, a commitment to put First Nations children's health first and worry about who pays later. Carolyn Buffalo was there that day.
And by the time the vote was done, we were all crying because we were all so happy. We were all thinking, okay, now the government's going to change how it does things for First Nations kids. They actually care. They actually are going to start funding the needs of First Nations kids properly.
That same year, the Assembly of First Nations and the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society filed a human rights complaint against the federal government, alleging that child welfare services provided to First Nations children on reserve were flawed and discriminatory.
Nobody helped us. Nobody cared. You know, I talked to government official after government official, and I got a lot of lip service. You know, people go, oh, gee, that's really too bad. You shouldn't have to go through that. But nobody lifted a finger to help. So we had to file our human rights complaint.
They were the first steps in what would become one of the largest settlement agreements in history.
The federal government discriminates against First Nation children, according to the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. The ruling came down today, almost a decade after the complaint was made.
Both Cindy Blackstock and the Assembly of First Nations filed the complaint, claiming the federal government underfunds the First Nations child welfare system.
In 2016, the tribunal ruled in favor of the plaintiffs, finding that First Nations children were being discriminated against.
When you see something happening that's wrong for kids, it's your job to stand up and make sure that you do everything in your power to make sure they have a proper childhood.
The ruling ordered Ottawa to pay $40,000 to each First Nations child that was forced to leave their homes to access services, or who were denied services under Jordan's principle.
Noah regards doing these fights as his job. This is the job that was given to him by the Creator to do, because nobody was fighting for these kids and their families. Like, everything we went through, we did on our own.
It's been more than 15 years since Jordan's principle was first passed in the House of Commons. Noah is now 20 years old.
And we always ask Noah before we do anything. But it was him who decided for us what we were going to do. What did you say, Noah, when we said, Noah, do you want to fight the government again? Skoden. So we were like, okay, we'll do it.
It's been more than 6 years since the Human Rights Tribunal found that Canada has discriminated against Indigenous children. Ottawa's proposed $40 billion pledge to resolve the long-standing complaint has itself become a point of contention.
I'm just amazed. Like, we're still having to go through it and still having to have these battles in this day and age. It should be stopped. It should stop already, which is why with the $40 billion settlement, which sounds like a lot of money, the long-term reform piece is so important, because we have to fix the system so that these things don't happen anymore.
They're arguing that these kids are not entitled to certain things because they're Indigenous. It's not because it's just because they're Indigenous. That's the only reason that they were not getting these services. If somebody tries to tell me otherwise, they have to prove it to me. Like, document this. Prove to me that you're not being biased or racist, prejudiced against Indigenous handicapped children, or just Indigenous kids to begin with.
And for Indigenous children and youth that have been discriminated against, like Noah and his family, it's more than compensation. It's the long-term reform that could make the biggest difference.
We just wanted the basic things that his doctors and his therapists and his medical caregivers said he needed. We weren't asking for the moon. We weren't asking for anything special. Just what everybody else got.
September 2022. Noah and his family have traveled to Ottawa to see the final settlement agreement pass the finish line. It's been a long journey. A journey the family hopes will soon reach some sense of closure.
That building there, Noah, is the Supreme Court. That's the highest colonial court in Canada. Yeah. And that's where the federal court is, where we were supposed to be today. Another colonial court. But they were going to make a decision that was going to help all of us, but now we wait some more.
At the 11th hour, the federal court postponed hearings into the approval process. It's another in a long line of delays that has become all too familiar for the family.
Hopefully, we will be able to reach a settlement. Court will be able to ratify it, and we won't actually have to be in the Supreme Court part of the Supreme Court building. That's our hope anyway. Because the kids shouldn't have to wait anymore.
The kids are not getting any younger.
Nope.
And just all about political gamesmanship.
We start tonight with breaking news out of Ottawa, where the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal has rejected the federal government's $20 billion child welfare settlement with the Assembly of First Nations.
It was a decision that no one saw coming. According to the tribunal, the settlement deal did not fully satisfy its orders, as it did not guarantee the $40,000 in compensation for each child and caregiver.
I'm deeply frustrated. It's a sad day for the many First Nations families learning today that their long wait for compensation and acknowledgement is going to continue. I don't know when or if compensation will flow to these kids and families at this stage. We had come so close to compensation, finally reaching our people, and today's ruling is a significant setback.
For more now on the ruling today by the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal, we're joined now by Cindy Blackstock, the Executive Director of the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society. Cindy, thanks for taking the time. The First Nations Child and Family Caring Society is welcoming today's ruling by the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal, while others like the Assembly of First Nations are not. Can you sort that out for us?
So we didn't think this was fair. Like, the ministers were clear that $40,000 was the floor. And that's what should happen. Canada should pay those folks and then improve the situation for so many other people. And so that was the issue before the tribunal. And the tribunal saying, like we've said, there's lots of good things in that final settlement agreement. Canada should move forward with that final settlement agreement. But it can't leave people behind. You can't take checks away from children in care and call that justice. Like, these people are legally entitled to the $40,000. So we wanted to make sure that they're included and that their rights are respected.
The news came as a devastating blow for Carolyn Buffalo. We caught up with her in the weeks following the decision.
So we're disappointed right now. We don't know what's going to happen next, if anything. And yeah, we were all just really crushed. The day we heard about the decision, you know, it was really hard for us to not be upset. You know, we spent a good part of the day, at least I did anyway, crying. And I know that, like, Noah feels bad already. You know, he feels really, really awful because it's like we said, you know, he looks at himself as an advocate for other children. That's why we're doing this. And if we get nothing, I know he's going to feel like he let everybody down.
But that wasn't the end of the story. Less than 2 months after the tribunal's decision, delegates at the AFN Special Chiefs Assembly came together and renewed their support for the $20 billion class action.
We've gotten this far together, and we're not that far from crossing that finish line together. And we are going to show our kids that we love them enough to fight for them, and we love them enough to make sure that fight's done in a way that honors them.
The new resolution, which passed, urged Canada to immediately compensate all victims covered by both the tribunal's rulings and the class action.
This is not about any one of us. It's not about any one person. It is not about any organization. It's about the kids and their families. So let's get this done. No fighting, no disagreement. The kids are telling you enough is enough. Hi, thank you. God, you're from Scott. Oh.
The Unified Front has instilled a renewed sense of hope for Noah and his family. And while they aren't past the finish line just yet, they remain hopeful that Noah and all of the children that he has spent his entire life advocating for will one day receive that recognition and justice that has been denied to them for far too long.
The coins that are put in the fountain, it's for research on people with disabilities. So do you want to throw in a coin?
We'll get close enough for you to throw some coins in there, okay? You got it now.
Got him?
Don't hold them. 1, 2 for Noah.
To make a wish? Do you wish for the settlement agreement to be done? You have rights. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. You are entitled to all the services, the health care that everybody else gets. You have those rights. Don't let anybody deny them. And if we can help in any way, that's what we want to do, right, dude?
Yeah.
Intimacy between two people, that's a sacred thing. When you do that to somebody, it really, really destroys their spirit. It's like you take something from them. And most people that I know, like my friends that are my age, a lot of them are gone down a path of addiction. Every single one of them was sexually abused. It's so deeply rooted. Everybody at home knows who the abusers are. Light gets rid of dark. That's the only thing that does. Bringing light, the eighth fire, the prophecy, like it's time to light that up, show what's going on, and it's time now.